She lost her legs saving him, yet he cheated. She married the richest man to make them pay. Hello besties, welcome to Emma's Tales. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also, share this video with your loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you. As you do so, sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The sound of screeching tires split the night like a scream. She barely had a second to think before she saw the headlights veering out of control, the car rushing toward him. He froze on the other side of the road, eyes wide, legs refusing to move. She didn't think, she just ran. Instinct took over where reason could not. One desperate push was all it took, her palms slamming into his chest, forcing him back onto the pavement. The impact hit her instead. The world spun. Metal and glass folded into her like waves breaking on stone. The force ripped her legs out from under her, a sharp crack echoing in her body. For a moment, she felt everything all at once. The burn of torn flesh, the cold bite of glass, the weight of the car crushing what once held her upright. Then silence. Her ears rang as if the world had gone underwater. She lay sprawled on the asphalt, headlights glaring into her eyes, the smell of burning rubber thick in her lungs. Her chest heaved, each breath clawing its way out, but her mind was not on herself. It was on him. She turned her head just enough to see him, safe, untouched, staring at her with disbelief. Relief, sharp and painful, washed through her veins. She had saved him. That was all that mattered. Her body, though, told a different story. A chill spread quickly from her waist downward. She tried to wiggle her toes, but nothing answered. Panic tore at her chest, and her hands clawed weakly at the ground as if she could somehow pull her body back together by sheer will. Voices rose around her, shouts blending with sirens in the distance. Someone pressed their hands against her wounds, telling her to hold on, to stay awake. She wanted to answer, but her mouth filled with the metallic tang of blood. Darkness edged into her vision, heavy and relentless. Just before it swallowed her, she thought of him, the man she loved, the one she had risked everything for. She hoped he understood what she had given. She hoped he would never forget. When she woke again, it was not to chaos, but to stillness. A white ceiling hovered above her, too bright, too sterile. The steady beep of a machine anchored her back to life. Her body felt heavy, leaden, but strangely hollow. She tried to move, tried to sit up, and that was when it hit her, the absence. She threw back the blanket, her heart pounding in her ears. The space where her legs should have been ended abruptly, bandaged stumps resting where once there had been strength, grace, the rhythm of her daily steps. A sob rose before she could stop it, ragged and raw. She pressed her fists to her face, muffling the sound, but nothing could silence the truth staring back at her. The door creaked open. She turned, tears streaking her cheeks, and there he was, the man she had saved. His face was pale, eyes rimmed with red, but still he stood whole. Whole because she wasn't. He rushed to her side, taking her hand, his words tumbling out. Gratitude, guilt, fear. She heard them but barely understood. Her mind couldn't let go of what she had seen under the sheets, of the hollow space where her legs had once carried her through life. She tried to smile for him, weakly, because wasn't this what love was? To give until it hurt, to lose so the other could live? But deep inside, a storm gathered, heavy and merciless. She had given him everything, even the part of herself she could never reclaim. The room smelled of antiseptic and sorrow. Nurses came and went, checking the monitors, adjusting the drip, whispering words of comfort she could not bear to hear. Every time the door closed and she was left alone, her eyes drifted to the window. Outside, the world kept moving. Cars drove past, people walked, lives continued on legs that worked, steps taken without thought. Her world, however, had been cut short in an instant. And yet, beneath the grief, there was something else. A flicker of pride, faint but steady. She had saved him. She had chosen, without hesitation, to push him out of harm's way. That love, that courage no car could crush. It was hers, even if her legs no longer were. But as she lay back against the pillow, exhaustion settling over her again, she knew life would never be the same. Nothing could give her back what was gone. The sacrifice was final, unchangeable. All she could do now was face the weight of it and hope that the man she had saved was worth the price she had paid. The days after the hospital felt endless. Recovery was not just a word, it was a daily battle. The pain was sharp in places she could no longer feel, cruel reminders of what was gone. Every movement depended on someone else, on nurses, on the wheelchair, on him. Especially him. At first, he was always there. He pushed her through the sterile corridors, sat beside her bed during long physiotherapy sessions, and fed her when her hands shook too much to hold a spoon. He whispered promises in the quiet of the night that they would face this together, that nothing had changed. His voice wrapped around her like a safety net, and she clung to it because she had nothing else. But as the weeks stretched into months, the promises thinned. His visits became shorter, sometimes distracted. He would check his phone more often than he looked at her. She told herself it was stress, that the weight of what had happened pressed on him too. She wanted to believe he was struggling alongside her, not walking away from her. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Still, little cracks appeared. She noticed how his touch grew hesitant, how he no longer held her hand with the same easy warmth. When she asked about his day, his answers were clipped, vague, as if he had built walls she could not climb. At night, when he thought she was asleep, she heard him sigh, long, weary sounds that carried a distance words could not cover. She tried harder. She smiled through the pain, laughed at his half-hearted jokes, told him she loved him even when his eyes darted away. She wanted to hold on, to remind him that they had something worth fighting for, something she had almost died to protect. But love cannot survive on one person's will alone. The first real seed of doubt came one evening when he left earlier than usual. He said he had work, but his voice held no conviction. She let it go, not because she believed him, but because she wanted to. Later, scrolling through her social media in the quiet of her hospital room, she stumbled across a photo, a picture of him at a bar, drink in hand, smiling beside another woman. The caption wasn't suspicious on its own, just friends tagging friends, but the sight burned into her like acid. Why hadn't he told her? Why hadn't he mentioned the night out? She convinced herself it was nothing. A harmless outing. A moment of normalcy he deserved after weeks trapped in hospitals. She swallowed the unease, forced herself to believe. But the lies piled up. Missed calls. Messages he brushed off. The way he showered before seeing her, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't hers. His phone always face down on the table, never left unattended. These were not the habits of a man carrying guiltless love. The truth came crashing in on her one rainy afternoon. She had convinced him to take her for a short drive, just to feel the world again. As he parked outside a cafe to grab coffee, she stayed in the car, watching raindrops race down the glass. His phone, forgotten in the cup holder, buzzed. Once, then twice. The screen lit up with her name, someone she didn't know, but the message was clear enough. I miss you. Last night was perfect. When will I see you again? Her breath caught. Her hands trembled as she stared at the words, each one cutting deeper than any blade. She wanted to scream, to throw the phone, to force the world to make sense again, but she couldn't move. The betrayal rooted her to the seat, heavier than the chair she relied on now. When he returned, coffee cups in hand, she couldn't look at him. His smile faltered at her silence, his eyes flicking to the phone before realization spread across his face. The excuses tumbled out fast, clumsy and desperate. He said it was nothing, just a friend, a misunderstanding. But the truth was in his eyes, the guilt, the fear of being exposed. No words could undo what she had seen. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Her chest felt hollow, her heart pounding against the space where love had once lived. Anger surged, hot and violent, but it was drowned by sorrow. She had given him everything, her trust, her future, her legs, and he had repaid her with lies. She wanted to ask why. Why wasn't her sacrifice enough? Why wasn't she enough? But the words stuck in her throat, burning too much to speak. The drive back was silent. She stared out the window, rain blurring the world into streaks of gray. He kept glancing at her, his knuckles tight around the steering wheel, but he said nothing. Neither did she. Back at her room, she wheeled herself to the window and sat in the stillness, staring at the street below. People walked past freely, umbrellas swaying, steps steady and unbroken. She watched them and felt the weight of her own body, what she had lost, what she had given, what he had thrown away. The tears came slowly, not in loud sobs, but in steady streams she couldn't control. Each drop was a fragment of trust dissolving, each one a reminder that love had betrayed her twice, once by taking her legs, and now by breaking her heart. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just sat there, empty, realizing that the man she had saved was not the man she thought he was. Her old life ended not with the accident, but here, in this quiet room, with the weight of betrayal pressing down harder than any injury could. The days blurred together after the truth came out. Sleep was thin, broken by thoughts she couldn't silence. Food lost its taste, the air in her chest heavy and stale. She moved through the motions, therapy, meals, checkups, but her heart wasn't in it. Every sound reminded her of what she had lost. Every silence echoed with what he had done. The nights were the worst. Alone in her room, she replayed it all over and over. The moment she had pushed him out of danger, the sterile hospital mornings, his hand pulling away from hers, the message glowing on his phone. She wanted to hate him, but mostly, she hated herself. She had believed in him so completely, trusted him blindly, loved him recklessly. What did she have left now? Bandaged stumps where her legs had been, and a heart that felt just as severed. She stopped answering his calls. Eventually they stopped coming. The silence should have been a relief, but it felt like abandonment layered on betrayal. Even family visits, filled with pitying eyes and soft reassurances, became unbearable. Everyone seemed to look at her with the same question in their faces. What will you do now? She didn't know. She didn't want to know. One morning, a nurse wheeled her to the therapy room, but instead of trying the parallel bars again, she broke down. She gripped the cold metal and sobbed until her body shook, her voice raw and broken. The therapists exchanged looks, but said nothing. They had seen people crumble before. She felt like just another broken case on their list, another person who might not find the strength to come back. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. For days after, she refused to go. She stayed in her room, curtains drawn, the light locked out. She stared at the ceiling, tracing cracks and shadows, wondering what the point was. If the man she had given everything for could walk away, then what was left of her worth? But life has a way of breaking silence with unexpected sounds. Her younger sister came one evening, slipping into the room without warning. She didn't speak at first, just set down a box of her favorite pastries on the bedside table. The smell of sugar and cinnamon filled the air. "You used to fight me for the last one," her sister said softly, almost teasing. "Now you don't even want the first?" She tried to smile, but it twisted into something closer to a sob. Her sister sat beside her, not flinching when the tears came again, just holding her hand. No pity, no rehearsed comfort, just presence. That was the beginning, the first crack of light in her dark. From then on, something began to shift. It was slow, almost invisible at first. She agreed to try therapy again. The bars were cold, her arms weak, her body heavy, but she forced herself to stand. Her reflection in the mirror startled her, frail, tired, broken, but she held her gaze anyway. She told herself it was still her, even if she had to relearn how to move, how to live. Therapy became her battlefield. Each session was a war of inches, sweat dripping, muscles screaming, the weight of her body unfamiliar. She fell more times than she stood, but she kept trying. The therapists noticed, offering nods instead of pity, encouragement without condescension. Small victories added up, sitting straighter, balancing longer, gripping tighter. At night, when the silence threatened again, she began to write. Not for anyone else, just for herself. Words poured onto paper, her anger, her grief, her longing, her questions. Sometimes they turned into letters she never sent, sometimes into fragments of poetry she didn't know she had in her. But in those pages, she found pieces of herself she thought had been crushed beneath the wheels of that car. She realized something then. She had spent so long defining herself by him, by their love, by his betrayal, that she had forgotten who she was before all that. She was more than what had been taken. She was still here, still breathing, still fighting. One evening after therapy, her sister handed her a small box. Inside were the beginnings of prosthetic fittings, metal and plastic gleaming under the light. It'll be hard, her sister warned gently, but it can be done. She ran her fingers over the surface, cold and unfamiliar, and for the first time since the accident, she didn't feel only grief. She felt possibility. The first steps were awkward, painful, humiliating even. She fell more times than she walked. But every time she rose, she felt something shift in her chest. Not pride exactly, but defiance. Each fall was proof that she hadn't given up. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Slowly, her body remembered how to carry her. The mirror showed a woman standing again, not the same as before, but not destroyed either. Different, yes. Scarred, yes. But alive. One night she caught her reflection and really looked at herself. Not at what was missing, but at what remained. Her face, tired but strong. Her hands, steady now. Her eyes, no longer empty. She whispered to herself, "I'm still here." The words were quiet but fierce. She knew then she could not stay broken. She refused to be defined by betrayal or pity. She had been knocked down, cut apart, abandoned, but she was still standing. Not for him, not for anyone else, for herself. And as she lay down that night, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Resolve. She was no longer just the girl who had lost her legs. She was someone rebuilding, someone preparing. Life had taken much from her, but it had not taken her will. Her rebirth had begun. The first time she met him, she wasn't looking for anyone. She had been invited to a charity gala by her therapist, who insisted it would do her good to step into the world again. The hall was filled with glittering chandeliers, clinking glasses, and people in dresses and suits that seemed to belong to another universe. She felt out of place, even in the elegant gown her sister had helped her into, even with her prosthetic legs carrying her with measured, careful steps. Still, she stayed. She stood by the edge of the crowd, sipping water, watching people laugh and chatter about investments, politics, and art. That was when she noticed him. Noticed because the room seemed to bend around him. His presence was commanding, not loud or ostentatious, but undeniable. The richest man in the country, they whispered. The kind of man who could buy entire companies with a phone call. Yet when his gaze found her, it wasn't curiosity or pity she saw. It was interest. Genuine interest. He approached her without hesitation, his tone warm but direct. "You're standing here as though the room isn't good enough for you," he said with a faint smile. "And perhaps it isn't." She laughed, startled by the boldness. But it wasn't mocking. He was testing her, measuring her spirit. She answered in kind, her wit sharper than she had thought she still possessed. That first conversation lasted longer than she realized. By the end of it, she was surprised to find herself smiling. Not the forced kind she had learned to give, but one that rose from somewhere real. Their paths crossed again, and again. At first by coincidence, then by choice. He began inviting her to events, to dinners, to walks through his gardens where the air smelled of roses and the world seemed quieter. He asked her questions no one else had asked. Not about what she had lost, but about what she wanted, what she dreamed of, what she believed in. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. She found herself telling him things she hadn't told anyone. Her fears, her anger, her hunger for something bigger than herself. He listened, not with the detachment of a man humoring a broken woman, but with the focus of someone who respected her every word. Slowly, she understood. He didn't see her as damaged. He saw her as a survivor, a woman who had been broken and rebuilt herself. His admiration was not born of pity, it was born of recognition. He, too, had fought battles of his own, though different from hers. Their scars were not the same, but they were both marked by struggle. It began as companionship, but it grew. The way his hand brushed hers during conversations, the warmth in his eyes when she laughed, the quiet strength he offered when silence stretched between them. He didn't try to fill her emptiness. He stood beside it, acknowledging it, respecting it. And in time, she realized she wanted him there. When he asked her to marry him, it wasn't on bended knee, with rehearsed words. It was during a quiet dinner at his estate, the table lit by candlelight. He simply said, "I don't want to admire you from a distance anymore. I want you beside me, always. Not because you need me, but because we're stronger together."
Her heart trembled at the words. Marriage had once meant love, sacrifice, and betrayal. Now it meant something else: power, dignity, choice. She didn't answer right away, but when she did, her voice was steady. Yes. The wedding was unlike anything she had imagined before. No lace-draped fantasies of fairy tales, no fragile promises whispered in borrowed chapels. This was grandeur, deliberate and unapologetic. The guest list read like a roll call of influence: politicians, tycoons, celebrities. Cameras flashed, headlines buzzed. But when she stood beside him, dressed in silk that flowed around her like water, she felt no fear. She wasn't the broken girl anymore. She was his equal, his partner, a woman who had risen from ruin to command respect. As the vows were spoken, she caught sight of faces in the crowd, some staring with awe, some with envy, some with disbelief. And among them, hidden at the edge, was the man she had once saved. His expression was unreadable, but she didn't look away. She didn't need to. The contrast was written in every detail of her new life, once discarded, now untouchable. After the ceremony, her new husband held her hand firmly as they walked past the flashing cameras. She felt the weight of every lens, every headline forming, and for once she welcomed it. Let the world see. Let them all know that she was not defeated, not forgotten. She had risen higher than anyone expected, higher than even she had once believed possible. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. In the days that followed, her world shifted. Luxury was part of it, yes, the mansions, the cars, the trips to places she had only seen in magazines. But more than that, it was the power. The respect in people's voices when they addressed her. The way doors opened where once they had slammed shut. She sat at tables where decisions were made, her voice listened to, her ideas considered. And through it all, he stood by her. Not as a savior, not as a master, but as a partner. He treated her with the same respect in private as he did in public. He reminded her, with every action, that her worth had never been lost. For the first time since the accident, she felt whole, not because her body was restored, but because her spirit was. The betrayal no longer defined her. The pity in people's eyes no longer cut her. She had reclaimed her dignity, and in its place, she had built something stronger than she had ever known. She was no longer just a survivor. She was untouchable. She stood in front of the glass wall of the skyscraper, the city lights twinkling beneath her like a million scattered stars. The reflection staring back at her wasn't the broken woman who once clung to a man that betrayed her, it was someone reborn, sharp-eyed, dignified, untouchable. She adjusted the hem of her gown, the fabric catching the light like liquid fire, and for a moment she let herself breathe in the victory. Not just the wealth. Not just the status. But the fact that she had clawed her way back from the kind of darkness that should have buried her. Her husband, the man who had believed in her when she couldn't even believe in herself, touched her arm softly, grounding her. "They're waiting," he murmured, his voice a quiet anchor. He didn't need to remind her who they were, the same society that once whispered about her tragedy, pitied her, and then forgot her. The same circle that had cheered for her ex and turned away when the truth of his betrayal didn't fit their polished narratives. Now they were here again, only this time the balance of power had shifted. The ballroom erupted into applause when she entered, her presence commanding in a way that went beyond wealth. She felt eyes following her every move, not out of sympathy, but respect, perhaps even fear. Whispers fluttered through the air like moths around a flame. She caught fragments. That's her. The woman who survived. Look at her now. And then, inevitably, she saw him. The man she had once lost everything for. The one who had watched her bleed for him and then betrayed her with another woman while she struggled to learn how to live again. He stood frozen near the edge of the crowd, his face pale, his smile brittle. Time had not been kind to him. The charm that once blinded her looked cheap now, stretched thin by regret and mediocrity. His eyes met hers, and she felt that familiar sting, but it no longer had power. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. She walked past him without breaking her stride, the weight of silence heavier than any words she could have spoken. That single act, her indifference, was sharper than vengeance. It told him everything, that she no longer saw him as a chapter in her life, only as a cautionary footnote. But fate wasn't finished. Later that evening, he cornered her in the corridor outside the ballroom, desperation bleeding through his voice. You've changed, he said, his words cracking. You don't understand, She cut him off with a calmness that startled even herself. I understand perfectly. I gave you everything, even my body, even my future. And when I needed you, you took my sacrifice and threw it away. You don't deserve my anger, and you'll never earn my forgiveness. But you'll live with the truth, that I rose without you, and I'll keep rising long after you've been forgotten. The words landed heavier than a slap. He staggered back, swallowing emptiness, and for the first time, she saw him for what he truly was, small. She left him there, drowning in the ruins of his choices, and didn't look back. Her triumph wasn't just in confronting him. It was in how she had rebuilt herself. She had taken her pain and made it a foundation for strength. She had turned humiliation into dignity. And she had found a love that was built not on pity, but on respect, a man who saw her not as broken, but as unbreakable. Months later, as she stood on a stage giving a speech for a foundation she had started to support others facing physical challenges, she felt a swell of pride she couldn't contain. The crowd listened with rapt attention as she spoke, her voice steady, her story raw but inspiring. She didn't hide the scars, the prosthetics, or the nights of despair. Instead, she told the truth, that life had torn her apart, but she had chosen to rise. By the time she finished, the room was standing. Applause thundered in her ears, but this time it wasn't distant like the applause on the day she nearly died saving a man who didn't deserve it. This time it was hers. Pure, earned, undeniable. Walking off the stage, she caught sight of her husband smiling at her, his pride evident, his love unshaken. And for the first time in a long time, she felt something deeper than revenge, deeper than survival. She felt peace. Not because she had married the richest man. Not because she had silenced the whispers or humbled those who wronged her. But because she had proven to herself that no betrayal, no loss, no tragedy could define her unless she allowed it. She was no longer the woman who lost her legs saving someone who didn't deserve her. She was the woman who reclaimed her power, her dignity, her life. And that was the sweetest triumph of all. Hey besties, thanks so much for sticking around till the end. If you felt something, learned something, or just enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button. See you next time, bye.